Get to know Vanessa Joy Walker, an amazing two-time cancer survivor, wife, and author of Make Room for Joy.
I'm so excited to feature Vanessa Joy Walker on the Shundria Show today. How are you, Vanessa?
I'm great. It's good to be here.
Thank you so much. Well, welcome to the show. I understand you're a professionally trained opera singer turned adversity expert, speaker, and professional coach. How long have you personally been diligently inspiring individuals?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that I'm probably what my mother would call a professional encourager. I think I've been doing it since I was a young person. It comes naturally to me. But as a career and as something I've been doing more intentionally, probably for the last 5 to 7 years, traveling and speaking, and then doing a lot more one-on-one encouragement and supporting people in their journees.
Tell me about yourself. Where are you from and where do you live today?
Yeah, so I am Canadian. I'm a Canadian American. So I was born in Canada, born and raised there, moved here when I was young, 18, a baby, heading off to college. And never came home. My mother said, I know it. You're never gonna come back. You're gonna turn into a Yankee.
Where are you?
And she,
Pardon? Where
am I now?
Uh-huh.
I am a New Yorker. I've lived there for 20 years, but I'm actually in North Carolina right now.
Okay.
So my husband and I had to come here during everything with COVID. In our neighborhood in Brooklyn was getting really bad, and I have a compromised immune system.
Okay.
So we're going to be here in North Carolina for a little while.
Okay, so from Canada to New York.
Yeah, to North Carolina.
To North Carolina. Okay. That's awesome. Now, you've written an amazing book called Make Room for Joy, right?
Yeah,
so
Make
what
Room
was
for
the
Joy.
inspiration for your book?
So people have been saying I should write a book for a really long time, and writing a book is really overwhelming. But last year, I really felt like it was time to tell my story more intentionally. I tell people God really woke me up in the middle of the night and said, it's time for you to do something more with your story. And I was terrified because I don't really consider myself a writer, although I love writing. But the idea of writing down my story with the hope of inspiring people seemed really overwhelming, because it is, right? Writing a book is overwhelming.
Well, you have to be so transparent, so I understand.
Yeah, definitely. But the inspiration really was birthed out of this idea of crisis and how we approach crisis in this world. I feel like growing up, both in Canada and also the years I've spent here in the United States, there is this sense that we should be avoiding crisis at all times, right? It's like we're preparing to avoid the crisis as opposed to preparing for the crisis. And life is full of mishaps. Life is full of difficulty. Life is full of crisis. And what I realized when I went through my own crisis was that if I had been a little bit more prepared, if I had been more steeped in my faith, more steeped in who I was as a human being, I would have been able to tackle things differently and more perhaps efficiently and more joyfully than at times I did. And so my inspiration was I wanted to encourage others to find joy and find hope and find peace in the messiest moments of life. I don't want anyone to go through this life being hopeless.
Right. What's the full title of the book?
So it's Make Room for Joy. Choose hope and cultivate joy in the middle of life's most complicated season.
Now I want to know why you chose the title.
Yeah. You want to know why we chose the title? So I chose the title because joy is one of those things we talk a lot about in the world. A lot of people, say choose joy, find joy. And what I realized that I say a lot of is make room for things in your life. And the idea of joy is not something that you have to create on your own. Joy is not something that you have to create. I believe that it is already created, but we have to make room for it in our lives. And part of making room for it is getting familiar with it, but also getting familiar with the things that take up space in our lives that might prevent us from making room for joy.
So it's kind of like reworking everything that's going on in your life and eliminating as much of the things that don't bring you joy as possible.
Yeah, and not just eliminating them, but understanding them, right? Like, so fear and bitterness or resentment or anger, uncertainty, getting familiar with those things, getting familiar with our crisis, getting familiar with our suffering so that we can get familiar with our joy.
I love that because I know that, right now it's such a difficult time in the world, but even before, it's not that there were no difficulties prior to COVID,
right?
Impacting the world. So, it's a great thing to kind of sort and compartmentalize, life in general and be able to just kind of weigh those outcomes and our response to it.
Definitely.
What are your hopes for your readers?
So my hope is that people will really ultimately see their own stories differently. It's one thing to read a book and understand the details and the circumstances of one person's journey, but my story is just one of many. And the specific things that I've gone through are different than the things that you've gone through. They're different than the things that my husband's gone through and my friends have gone through. But the thing that connects us are all of those things between the lines, like the pain, like the loss, grief, disappointment, fear. Those things can connect us. And so my hope is that as people read this book, they will begin to see their own crises differently. They will begin to see their own joy differently. So at the end of each chapter, I actually have a section that's called Make It Personal, because often in memoirs, it's just like all about the author, but I want this book to be about you, the reader. And so it's that make it personal. It's like, listen, whatever my journey is, great. Now I want you to think about your own journey. How are you going to choose hope, find joy, deal with grief in your own journey?
Oh, tell me about, so I hear you saying, I love it. What I love about it is that you're saying, I do tell my story, but unlike other books where it's just all about me, it's like you're stepping up first to be transparent. I'll share my story so that you can kind of analyze what you've been through. So
yeah,
some of the hardest points in your own life and how you personally made room for joy.
Yeah, I really appreciate that question because, and I appreciate how you set it up, because I think the whole part about being transparent is so important. And really, this idea of joy and the importance of it came out of a time in my life that was horrible. I mean, I was going through a messy separation, divorce. I had cancer for the first time. I was in New York City, alone, away from my family, going through chemotherapy. My career was in the toilet. I wasn't making any money as a singer. And I was desperately sad. And disappointed in myself and disappointed in life. And as I looked around, it felt like there was nothing to be happy about. There was just nothing to be happy about. And that's when I realized that to survive, I was going to have to find something else to fuel me, right? And so The idea of joy, and a joy for me, because I'm a person of faith that was really rooted in my faith, that those ideas coming together really became a lifeline for me. It became what allowed me to thrive in the middle of the most difficult times, in the middle of the cancer and the divorce and the betrayal and the fear.
What brings you joy today?
Ooh, so many things. And it really depends on the day. Joy is organic and it is flexible and adaptable. That's one of the things one of the points I really want to get across to people is that joy is different every day. So sometimes joy is quiet. Sometimes joy is peaceful. And sometimes joy is loud and exuberant. The things that bring me the most joy, I would say, is when I am sharing with someone or connecting with someone, and there is that unspeakable thing that happens, right? You know, when you have that conversation and you realize, oh my gosh, like we were meant to talk, and there's this mutual encouragement and this mutual building up. It's that kind of unknown thing. Those moments really bring me joy.
Do you feel like you're aligned with the world? You're aligned with the people
Yeah.
you're talking to? You feel like you're making a contribution and a difference in the world?
Definitely, because I really feel like joy is something that is not just for us, it's for everyone. Joy is contagious. And the more we share it, the more we have to share.
It's beautiful. Generally speaking, why do you think people underestimate the power of joy and their own ability to seek happiness? But you've been on both sides, you know, you have joy, but you've also been in a place where you couldn't find any joy. So now that
definitely,
you're an expert, you're a joy expert. Why do you think people underestimate its power?
You know, I think people underestimate it because many people, including myself, at times conflate the idea of joy and happiness. And I think often we think they're the same thing. And I really like to make the distinction between the two. Happiness is something that happens to us. It's something that is that has an expiration date. Joy is something that is all around us, and we get the opportunity to step into it and nurture it and experience it. And so because happiness is something that happens to us and it's experiential, it's not always easy to experience when there's difficulties. So when people are thinking joy and happiness are the same thing, listen, if you just lost your job and there are people in your life who have COVID or are suffering in some other way, you're probably looking around saying, gosh, like there's not that much to be happy about right now. And you're right, there isn't. But that doesn't mean that joy doesn't exist there, because there's all kinds of ways that we can experience joy. And so if joy is something that comes from within, then it is something that can be cultivated all the time. And so one of the things that I love to encourage people to do if they're having a difficulty finding joy is make room for gratitude first.
Make room for gratitude first. Why is that? Because
I have never met a truly joyful person that is not grateful. And so making room for gratitude it's a posture. And so we talk a lot about gratitude in the world right now. And there are a lot of gratitude journals and people have gratitude practices. But I like to think of gratitude as not something that we check off our list, but it's something that we step into and hold on to throughout our day. So if we're making space for gratitude in our life, that means that we're also pausing to actually observe what's going on, right? We're actually taking a moment to say, oh, wow, like, look at this beautiful book that I have that, I'm really grateful for this. And look at, this awesome cup that I have, and it keeps my drink cold for hours on end. Like, those seem like little things, but when we take a moment to pause, even in the middle of the most difficult times, there's always something that will give us, that we can be grateful for. And that is the first step toward making enough room so that we can actually see and experience the joy that is around us.
So do you write down what you're grateful for? Do you keep a grateful journal, or are you just always in tune with, what you're grateful for, how you're feeling throughout the day? So like a mental note?
Yeah, I'm not a great journaler. And I wish I was. I was always one of those people like, oh man, I want to be one of those people that have like those journals and they journal every day for 5 hours. No, it's not me. But I do write down the things that I am grateful for sometimes. Sometimes they're in the form of a prayer. Sometimes they are actually jotted down. If I'm having a really rough day or a really rough time, I will actually force myself to pull out a journal and write it down, even though that's not something that I often do, because for me, that process helps. But sometimes it's really just taking a moment to practice the pause and say, like, gosh, like, is there one thing in the next 60 seconds that I can be grateful for?
Oh, that's great.
And
that's a great perspective.
And just do that.
And find
it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be complicated. We try to complicate everything, right? Like if you're going to do gratitude, you have to do it for 90 days and 30 minutes a day. No, take 60 seconds. Yes, every moment.
I like that. I like it. With so much chaos, tension, and uncertainty in the world right now, how do you encourage people to find peace in their personal storms?
Hope. Hope is the lifeboat. Hope is something that without it, we drown. And
so having something to look forward to.
Having something to look forward to, but having something to believe in. Because to have hope, you have to believe in something. And often, people will say, well, we don't share the same faith base. I say, okay, that's fine. We don't have to share the same faith base, but everyone believes in something. Say, well, no, I don't believe in God, but you believe in something. You believe in hard work. You might believe in your partner. You might believe in God. You might believe in the universe, whatever. Everyone believes in something. And hope is what keeps us afloat in the middle of the most difficult moments. It helps us because, as you just said, we have something to look forward to. We can remind ourselves that even though in this moment I might be feeling uncertain, frustrated, angry, sad, painful, whatever, that this too shall pass. This will end. And we may not have control over the storm, but we have control how we interact with the storm, how we show up in the storm, what we're wearing. Are we clothed in anger or are we clothed in gratitude? Are we clothed in fear or are we clothed in hope?
And how we handle it after the storm's over.
Yes, 100%. And then think about it. It's like that idea when, when if you're swimming or you're going somewhere, and they always say, like, make sure that you either have your mask on first before you put someone else's mask on, or if you're jumping in the water, have your own life jacket before you give a life jacket to someone else, right? When you are clothed in hope, you now have the opportunity to reach out to other people, right? And bring them alongside. When you're accessing joy, you now have the opportunity to see the pain in someone else and say, let me share some of this with you. Let me come alongside you. And because you are so secure in your own joy, you can now step into the pain of someone else and be there with them, right? Empathize with them. Because people are really, man, people are suffering. Like, this is not, the world is messed up. Like, anyone who pretends it's not, listen, I want to live in their neighborhood, right? Because the world is messed up. There's hate and death and illness and uncertainty. And we all have a part to play in creating a more joyful, equitable, love-filled community.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Well, you are absolutely phenomenal.
Oh, thank you.
As a self-described joy seeker, you are actually really helping us be more intentional with our happiness, and I'm so grateful for that. If anyone is interested in connecting with you or following your journey, what's the best way to do so?
So you can find me on all social media platforms, Vanessa Joy Walker. That's my handle. Also, VanessaJoyWalker.com. If you're interested in coaching or you want to purchase the book, you can purchase the book everywhere, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your local bookstore. I'm encouraging people, if you have a local bookstore that you like to shop at, please order it there first. And just remember that every moment is a destination.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time today, Vanessa. You've been absolutely wonderful, and I feel like you're going to inspire so many people, not only through this segment, but in the world. So thank you for your time today.
You.
I can't wait to share a video with you.
Sounds good.